Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Check All the Boxes with Next Level Digital Agreement Automation. And I'm Teresa Resick, Vice President of Market Intelligence here at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of today's event. And OneSpan is the underwriter of our webinar today, and we thank them very much for their support. And certainly thank you for taking the time to join us today. And as we get started, I just want to offer a few pointers for participating in our webinar today. Look to the chat feature, and this is where we will share a link to get some resources, some really good reading. And also go in there right now, say hello, let us know where you're listening from. It's always a pleasure to see where around the world you are. Also ask questions of our presenters, use either the Q&A feature or the chat. And we're going to do our best to get to all of those questions towards the end of our webcast today, but feel free to ask those questions as we go along, and so that we'll have them there for our discussion towards the end of the webinar. And later in our webinar, I would greatly appreciate it if you would take our feedback survey. I always value your opinions and what you have to say about what we did today, and also what else you'd like to hear and learn about in future webinars. And this webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to the AIIM.org's Resources Learning Center page in just a few days. So now I want to introduce our host and MC that we have for us today. And Kevin Crane is AIIM's content strategist, and Kevin authors ebooks and infographics on a wide variety of intelligent information management and digital transformation topics. He's the producer and host of AIIM on Air podcast, and that podcast was recently listed as Forrester's 100 Best Channel Podcasts of 2021. So, and I have the pleasure of working with Kevin on a number of projects, including working together with just about all of our webinars here. So Kevin, welcome, and how are you doing today?
Hi, Teresa. I'm doing good. I hope you're doing well, and I hope everybody's doing well out there. Welcome to yet another great AIIM webinar, this time with our friends from OneSpan. Now, listen, after 2 years of social distancing and remote work environments and touchless delivery, the business of doing business has changed. Customers expect virtual transactions. Remote channels have become the primary method for things like opening a new account or securing a home loan, things like that. And organizations that can offer a personal human touch remotely are going to be better positioned to help their customers get the help that they need and ultimately gain a competitive advantage. So how can we deliver that personal touch in a remote, non-face-to-face world? In this webinar, we'll explore the new world of virtual transactions, mixing the security and authentication of electronic signatures with the interactivity and convenience of a video conference call. You might think of it as a virtual signing room. With the help of built-in e-signature and web-enabled video conferencing and rich collaboration features, you can interact and transact with customers for a superior customer experience. So today we're going to learn how those emerging services can give us an edge by recreating the power of an in-person meeting in a virtual environment. You know, it's like a web conference combined with the security of e-signature transactions. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guests from OneSpan who will demonstrate these features and more, starting with Michael McMahon. Michael is a digital transformation consultant with OneSpan, and Patrick Albert, a senior solutions architect with OneSpan. Mike and Pat, are you with us? Welcome to the event today.
Thank you. Yeah, we're here.
Very good. Well, please, Mike, Patrick, tell us more. How does all of this work?
Well, fantastic. I'll jump right into the presentation here, and we will get started. Well, here we go. As always, Kevin, thank you very much for that introduction. And I look forward to starting this great presentation, of course, entitled Check All the Boxes with Next Level Digital Agreement Automation. Looking here for the agenda today, we're going to look at customer experience and driving digital transformation, defining easy in the digital world, talking about human and or digital in modernizing processes, and of course we'll have a Q&A session, and sprinkled in within this this webinar here, we will have a great demonstration, live demonstration done by the fantastic Pat Albert here. So let's jump right in. At the onset of the pandemic, every single business around the world, no matter the industry, faced the same challenge and asked the same exact question. How do I ensure my business can survive this crisis? And while the pandemic has been tragic in so many ways, I think it's allowed us to challenge the status quo as businesses accelerate the rate of their transformation. Every business is looking to digitize processes and eliminate in-person meetings to observe social distancing protocols. We've spoken to many organizations on different sizes and industries across many use cases, and we learned that some of the key business drivers for them moving to e-signatures include the following. First, making it easier for people to do business with them. So enabling employees, partners, and customers to sign anywhere, anytime, and on any device, improving that overall experience within the organization. Next, they also want to improve their business productivity and efficiency. So moving to an all digital process with e-signature reduces the time required to manually process paper-based documents. This can also eliminate manual processing errors by automating and enforcing business rules throughout the workflow, which can then in return eliminate the cost of handling documents and time correcting errors. And then lastly, COVID has forced us all to modify the way that we work. Organizations had to create alternative workflows for all of the manual, paper-intensive approval processes that typically require in-person approvals. These are all important and are driving digital imperatives inside of many organizations and require us to change the traditional ways of working to ensure that we can adapt to the changing needs of employees, partners, and most importantly, our customers. Today, we have a cross-section of individuals and organizations that are attending this webcast. We have attendees from financial services institutions, government agencies, healthcare organizations, insurance agencies, as well as a whole slew of other industries. So let's take a look at some of the top e-signature use cases that we at OneSpan are seeing. If you look at banks, insurance companies, and other financial services providers, many have moved their account opening processes online. So instead of having to go into a branch and fill out paperwork or wait for documents in the mail, financial services institutions are now enabling their customers to complete and e-sign their applications completely online. If you look at the healthcare industry, we're seeing a lot of adoptions for use cases related to patient onboarding and consent forms. But regardless of the industry that you're in, there are different departments in your organization that may require e-signatures. Across all industries, we see many companies and government agencies alike digitize their contracting and procurement processes. This also includes internal purchase approvals, as well as POs and NDAs with external parties. Keeping the bigger picture in mind, I know that some of you on today's presentation may have a specific use case in mind for getting started with these signatures, but signing is ubiquitous. It's everywhere in your organization. And what we've seen in working with many companies like yours is once you see the value of e-signatures in one area of their business, they then want to extend the value to other departments. This graph here, it illustrates different use cases for e-signatures in an organization like yours, where you see business to employee or internal signing workflows, business to business, and business to consumer transactions. As you move from B to E, B to C, or left to right on this graph, transaction volumes inherently increase. So think about an account opening application, or patient consent form, or any government to citizen document, for example, that typically has much higher volumes than an internal application, where signatures are required, such as an HR onboarding. When you look within your organization, you can see electronic signatures across all of these areas. The key takeaway here overall is to start thinking about the big picture of e-signatures inside your organization and to make sure the e-signature solution you are currently using and or evaluating is able to scale across the organization. I believe that part is extremely important. The ability to scale across the organization, no matter the use case. And if you don't believe that your current solution can scale with you, I would certainly highly recommend evaluating other potential options. So I thought a good starting point would to be able to take a step back and take a look at the past year. As we're all aware, COVID-19 has disrupted almost every facet of our personal and professional lives, and not always in a good way. But on the other hand, this pandemic has made a profound impact on what business looks like and how business will be conducted in years to come. We're seeing this already happen today in industries like banking and financial services, insurance, healthcare, and public sector and government, looking to offer digital services that keep pace with changing customer habits. In today's quote unquote anywhere economy, we know that consumers want and expect convenient at-home experiences. I think it's safe to say that the post-pandemic consumer now expects natively digital experiences that integrate into their day-to-day lives. And as a business, you're not always going to have the opportunity as an organization to be face-to-face with those customers, which possesses a number of challenges. These can revolve around verifying customer identities or providing a high-touch experience. And as we come out of this pandemic, consumers will continue to use digital. And I think we can all agree on that. But what they're going to increasingly turn to is human help. This will happen especially for more complex transactions, even when those transactions start in the remote or digital environment. COVID-19 as a whole has created a foundational shift towards digital-first processes. Digital is no longer pegged for self-service only channels. Digital has come from being a point technology narrowly focused for specific use cases or demographics to being at the center of driving enhanced customer interactions. Digital itself can elevate the customer experience across all channels. So, transitioning onto this slide pertaining to the evolution of digital interactions for customer-facing agreements, we're going to start our focus at the top of this chart and then work our way down. As the pandemic hit, it became very clear that getting agreements signed by customers was a top priority for businesses. Prior to COVID, there were still many companies that were still relying on in-person signing for completing agreements and documents with customers. So that gap as a whole is closed due to the necessity to maintain business productivity. The ability to sign remotely is where organizations are today, and this is combining PDF forms with an e-signature service. And although this is a good first step, there are some significant problems associated with it, and we'll get into some of those now. PDF forms are still very clunky, as many businesses have realized putting a PDF on a website is not a true digital experience. There are just too many steps in order to sign an agreement. There are sections of the PDF that require you to fill out the same information across multiple fields. And there are forms sent back and forth via email with the customer to correct errors or to fill out missing fields. Then, on top of all this, at the end of the process, you have to print, sign, scan, and even email those documents back. And we've seen that one of the biggest complaints during the pandemic is even a lack of scanners to have at home to facilitate this process. So, in order to adapt to that, the next advancement has been remote signing with dynamic forms. To make sure the switch to smart forms or dynamic forms, you have to make sure you take PDFs a step further. Bringing in a more human touch to the experience, signers are guided through the workflow with an intuitive interview-style approach, like a partner of Smart Communications. It almost eliminates the back and forth because documents are filled out properly on the first try and then automatically passed to OneSpan Sign to handle the e-signing workflows. This is where you can intelligently link the fields in your forms to your existing systems of record. And the last category is about how to interject human guidance in virtual channels where complex agreements are being processed. So how do we maintain that white glove experience when additional explanations are needed? This is a new approach where virtual signing combines video conferencing and co-browsing with digital identity verification and e-signatures. The goal is to provide a high level of interaction with the customer and create a secure paperless process while completing the transaction, all in a single session. So overall, the key takeaway here is to look at your organization and determine where you are on this path to digitization. Subpar digital experiences that are left unoptimized with multiple extra steps due to loosely integrated solutions are leading to high abandonment rates in today's market. And then as a whole, this crucial piece of in-person signing will be shown later on during the live demonstration by the great Pat Albert. Looking now, we're going to look to the poll option. And overall, looking forward to seeing the results on this one as they pop up on your screen. But as it's there, we'll make sure to look into the question as a whole. This question pertains to which of the following modes of signing are used at your organization today? Are they paper-based signing, remote e-signing, digital in-person e-signing, or virtual signing with human guidance via co-browsing? And of course, as mentioned at the top of the webinar here, we appreciate your feedback and look forward to seeing the results. I think that can act as enough time on here. I appreciate all the feedback overall. Let's see where everyone's at. These are certainly some interesting results, and seeing that paper-based signings at 82% is not a big shock, but I do appreciate all of the extensive activity here. I appreciate all the results as a wide-ranging poll here. Now moving on to this next slide, we wanted to make sure that we emphasize how important of the human digital connection is here. We have a top 5 US bank quoted as saying, as we come out of this pandemic, customers will continue to use digital, but when that moment is there, when they need a human, we'll be able to connect them to a human being. That's our approach in terms of how we're thinking about digital and that human connection. So how are we going to modernize these processes? We're talking a lot about it, but how does it actually happen? We have all these agreements and we got to get them to the finish line, because if not, it just doesn't even matter why we started. As transactions get more complex, like say processing a life insurance policy or completing a mortgage application, your customers are going to turn to channels where they can get that human help and human assistance. And many customers still want the convenience and also the safety of completing transactions, even those complex ones, remotely. So how do you enable these channels to interact with customers who are remote, but do it as humanly as possible? This is where we need to be shifting our strategy to a blended human and digital experiences where it makes the most sense. We introduced the OneSpan Sign virtual room for those complex agreements. You can sign, witness, and even notarize agreements using a secure live video conferencing session. This is all about you engaging with your customers in a more interactive way, allowing them to get the help that they need to complete, for example, financial agreements as if they were face-to-face with you. These virtual rooms are able to bring 4 key capabilities together. This includes two-way video conferencing for real-time communications with your customers, identification and authentication capabilities to ensure you know exactly who you're transacting with for that higher level of assurance, co-browsing and workflow capabilities to make it easy for you to review and collaborate simultaneously with the customer. They can pass control back and forth between the client. And as well as this, e-signature capabilities to create a legally binding and enforceable agreement that's backed by strong electronic evidence. Our goal at OneSpan is really simple. We want this to be a win-win for you and your consumers. The consumer gets the financial help that they need. It's fast, it's convenient, and there's no back and forth via the phone or email conversations. And then in return, your organization also gets access to new high-touch digital customer engagement channel to develop a relationship with your customer virtually and ultimately win them over. This itself on the screen right here is a static representation or visual of the steps involved in a virtual room setting. But as mentioned earlier, Pat is going to lead a live demonstration where we'll see all these elements here in action. The virtual room, it goes beyond just e-signature. It's a digital customer engagement solution. We've brought together those core capabilities to help you deliver a secure but interactive experience to your customers, as if you were face-to-face with them. There's no need to patch multiple solutions together. We can help you verify the identities of customers upfront in the process, get them into the virtual room in a secure manner, enable them to review documents simultaneously with your banking advisors and employees, sign and notarize those documents, and then store them in your system of record. And throughout this process, we're capturing every single action, who the participants are, what they reviewed, and what they signed. And then even on top of all of that, you'll even have access to the video recording of the virtual room session for audit or legal purposes. And so now at this point, I'll stop talking for a little bit and pass it over to the great Pat Albert to get through this this live demonstration here.
Thank you very much, Michael. That was a great presentation, and I hope I can fill his shoes with all those kind words. You know, fantastic and great, whatever. So I'm going to actually ask Michael to participate. So the demonstration I'm going to show you today is I'm going to start with the creation of a transaction. So I'm going to show you the options available, you know, regarding how do I authenticate and how do I select a virtual room versus just a generic, you know, electronic signature that's a remote process. We'll have Michael go in and we'll show you what this video conferencing looks like so that you can see that, and hopefully have some time at the end for some questions. So I logged into the OneSpan Sign platform. This is a white labeled service. So I'm using a fake logo in the upper left. You'll see this throughout the demo. I'm going to click a button to create a new transaction. And I'm going to go through this rather briefly because I think it's more important that we go through the signing ceremony and talk about the nuances with the virtual room more than it is the creation. And I'm going to create a new life insurance signing ceremony. So if Mike was looking for life insurance, I'll just put Mike. I was going to add last name. We can select what channel we want to go through. So I saw based on the poll that we took earlier that more than 50% of you guys are already using some type of an e-signing ceremony. So if your customers were fluent with web technology, they didn't need the extra hand-holding, you know, we can provide that as well. You can also do in-person signing. So even though you're using you know, the electronic capabilities, you can also, you know, sit down across the desk and look at things digitally. But I'm going to go ahead and select the virtual room. So this is going to enable some additional features inside of the transaction itself, and I'll point those out shortly. Some of the things you'll notice is our product of today, I'm automatically attaching an e-sign consent form. So part of e-sign law, for those of you who are not using electronic signatures today, Within the United States, we do have to get consent before the signing ceremony occurs. So this document I'm adding automatically every time I create a transaction. And then I can drag and drop the document that I created specifically for Michael to sign. So I can go out there and browse my hard drive and say, well, here's a PDF of a document that I created. I filled it all out. I made sure that it was complete, and I'm going to upload it to be part of the signing ceremony. I can add multiple documents and they're going to be displayed one after another. I just wanted to make sure that we had more than one on here so that you could see what that would look like as we move from one document to the next. Next thing I need to do is identify who the signers are going to be. So I'm going to start with Mike, and I know we've done this before. So in fact, his name is number 1 on my list. So I can add him as a signer. Now, there are some ways I can authenticate him. So even though we're going to use the virtual room and I'm going to have the camera available to me so I can see Michael during the signing ceremony, if he's a new customer to me, I might not know, is that really Michael or is that someone pretending to be him? We can incorporate some other authentication capabilities prior to Michael even getting into the signing ceremony. And he mentioned that prior in the slides is we can do ID verification, which would involve Michael holding up, once he gets the email, clicks the link to join the meeting, he's going to be prompted to scan or take a picture of his driver's license. And that driver's license is going to be validated to make sure it's, it's a real valid ID, that, the corners are as round as we expect them to be. It's the proper font. It has watermarks, and look at the name on the driver's license and also compare that to his face, so that he would have to also do a selfie so we can compare the face on the driver's license to a real human. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen before the signing ceremony, but I'm just going to add Michael as a signer. And I'm also going to add myself because even though I'm creating this, we could also maybe add another person that is going to host this. So if I'm not available, I could add a colleague of mine saying that person is going to act as the virtual room host. But I added myself and I'm now identifying myself as the host for that virtual room. But again, this is nice to set up for your colleagues. So if you're going to be away on vacation, you say, hey, while I'm gone, maybe my colleague can act as the host. As I scroll down, some of the other settings that are available is, since I selected a virtual room, is I can configure certain aspects of that. Like, do we want to enable the video, or do we simply want to share the desktop, so that he can see the document along with me? So even though you might not want to see each other face to face, you can also just share the desktop, which allows me to talk to Michael and explain things to him, but we're not going to see each other. We're going to leave this on just so you can see what that looks like. And of course, we can also schedule this. So if I want this to be on February 9th, which is today, maybe I'm going to have this for 1800 hours. So first I select the hours, then the minutes. So now it's set up for 6 o'clock tonight. Once that's done, I can say it's also going to be a 60-minute session. I can save that. And that is all I really need to do. So now we're scheduled for 6 o'clock tonight. Last step of the process is I'm going to look at the documents. The first one that it displayed was the e-sign consent, and then it scrolled down to the insurance application itself. And I know, since I created this document, that page 4 is where Michael would need to sign. So it's very simple to use this type of a platform to drag and drop a signature field saying, I want him to sign here. And I also want the signing date to appear right off to the right-hand side of that once he signs the document. So at this point, I'm going to send it out for signature. And once I do this, it is activating the transaction. And this is when the email would be generated to invite Michael to come in. And it's going to be scheduled for 6 o'clock this evening. Michael could open that. He could actually add that to his calendar so that 6 o'clock tonight, it's going to remind him, you got to join this session with Pat to go through and review your life insurance policy and sign that. Okay, Teresa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. It froze for just a moment when you said that the meeting is scheduled for 6 o'clock tonight.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just got a message that my internet is unstable. So I'm going to apologize in advance if we have any issues as we go through this. But I logged back into the platform and I'm going to click the link to start the signing ceremony. So once I click, I can see the details and I have the option to join this session. So once I go in here again, I have the option just like you do in Zoom. Oh, I got to select the right camera. Otherwise, it's going to tell me there's a conflict here. I can select if I want to use my camera or microphone and turn one of the two off. Make sure I get the right video input. There we go. Hey there, good afternoon, everybody. So now you can see me live. So once I click the button to get started, I'm going to go into the waiting room. So at this point, I can see myself. I've got a little green dot, which means I am actively waiting in the waiting room. And Michael is still on his way in. And Michael, I know you have the email in your inbox. So at this point, if you could click that button. And as I mentioned earlier, this could be a little bit of a process. Michael might have to go through some additional authentication. I made it simple for him. So once he clicks that, he's going to be still prompted to enable his camera and audio stuff. But once he comes in here, I'm going to see the green dot. So now everybody's available here. I can start the transaction. So some of the neat things about this. So this is, again, part of the whole signing ceremony. This is all using the same technology. We can go in here and look at the expectations for today. So I can tell Michael, we're going to go through and look at the e-sign consent form. We just have to review and accept that one. You're the only person that needs to do that. The next thing to do on our to-do list is to look at the life insurance application. And again, you're going to be the only signer for that one. So I can see off to the right-hand side, I am the one leading this meeting, which is why my picture is in the upper right-hand side. And me and Michael are both listed down at the bottom. So once I click the button to get started, the first thing that's going to appear again is that e-sign consent form. I can scroll through, but I do not have any buttons enabled on here. So I cannot accept this document. I cannot, do this on behalf of Michael. I can point this out. I could, highlight paragraphs and say, please pay attention to this. And if Michael, if you want to move your mouse around, if you have a question too, he could, highlight certain things or say, what does this paragraph mean right here? And once he's comfortable with that, I can enable him to be the signer by going to the right-hand side and passing control by clicking on the little mouse icon. Once I do that, it's going to reload the document, and any buttons that Michael would have to allow him to accept that are going to be enabled. And again, if you look off to the right-hand side, now you'll see that Michael is in the driver's seat. So now I could point out again, I could still move my mouse around on here saying, you have two choices. Since you saw the entire document, you could check this box and click the accept button. Or if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll have an accept button down there, no checkbox needed. And the reason we have the two is, again, if somebody looked at the entire document, you can make that assumption that, they've seen it, they had the option to read the entire thing, so now they're accepting it. Now, once we're finished with the e-sign consent, again, that if we had multiple people that had to do that, if Michael had a spouse sitting next to him as well, we could go through and have everybody accept that before we move on to the next document. But since he's the only one, I'm going to move on to review the e-sign consent or the insurance application itself. So now I could, again, go through this document, and this is typically where you'd need to have that personal touch. I might want to point certain things out saying, this is what we agreed upon. This is the type of application. This is the type of coverage you want. Does that look okay to you? We could go through the entire document, and if I needed to sign, if I was the writing agent, I could have a signature button enabled down below here. I did not do that. I simply put Michael on as the signer. So again, same method as before, as I can pass control to him. And it's going to reload the document and enable all of the signature fields for him. And there could be multiple. There could be places that he would need to initial. But now that he's in the driver's seat, this document is going to load. And again, I can still walk through and do some hand holding, saying that, if you want to jump right to the bottom, you can scroll down, or you can hit this button off to the left. And that's going to take you to your next signature field. So once he does that, he can click to sign. Again, I cannot do this on his behalf. He has to do that. I can only point to things since he is in control. He's the one that gets to sign. So go ahead and do that, Michael. And the last thing we want to do is, if that is all, if that is every signature location, I can say you need to confirm or submit this back by hitting the button at the bottom. So again, it allows you to do that personal touch. This is a new technology to some signers. And if they're not fluent in web technology, you can go ahead and do that, Michael. If they're not fluent, they might need you to walk them through that. But if they're comfortable doing e-signing processes, you don't need to use the virtual room. You could just use the remote signing ceremony. So that is going to conclude the entire signing process. I can click finished. And at this point, oh, I guess I do have to sign now. I could sign the document, or I could save it for later. So at this point, I'm going to conclude that. Oh, it's just telling me I had other things to do as well. So this is actually for a different transaction. I had another non-disclosure agreement. It's just walking me through one after another. Michael, I assume you've probably landed on a closing screen at this point.
I have.
Excellent. The closing screen, I can't share Michael's desktop, but the closing screen for him is going to allow him to review the documents one more time, or he can also download the completed documents and save them. He also has received an email that, after the fact, he can go back in for as many days as the documents are out there, and he can download his completed documents. So let's see, based on the time, I do have a couple more minutes. I'll just show you one last thing we can do here. Is, since I was the one that hosted this session, I can log back in. I can see that this life insurance is now completed as the status. So I could go in here and do a couple of things. Is I could go out here and I could also download the evidence summary, or I could archive and download the completed documents. So I can get those completed PDFs, download them, store them. They're going to be secure. They are tamper sealed, so there can be no more changes to those documents. So if I wanted to look at the evidence summary, this is going to tell me step by step exactly what happened. So if I open up the evidence summary, again, this is a PDF that our customers like to download and save. Should they have any type of legal disputes after the fact, it's always nice to have some type of audit available to you. So this document can be downloaded. Again, it is a PDF. And if you look at the very top, this document is also going to be locked. So you can see it says it's signed and all signatures are valid. So this document is tamper proof or tamper evident, which means that me as the sender, we produce this document, but I cannot make any changes to the audit document. So we do that to protect our customers, saying this document is basically gospel. This is exactly what happened. Pat joined the virtual room at this date and time, shortly after Michael joined. So you can see everything is date and time stamped. So once we started the signing ceremony, we reviewed the steps. I looked at the overview page. We viewed the e-sign consent form. It's showing you every single action, my IP address versus Michael's IP address. So I can see that Pat was the initial one that viewed the document. He passed control over to Michael. Michael accepted screen control. He viewed the document. He accepted the document. So every single step shows, what the action was, who took it, what their IP address was, what the document that's being viewed, all kinds of good information. So this is helpful, if a customer comes back and says, what, I got to see the document, but I didn't sign it. Pat was the one leading this. But this is showing no, this was actually handed over to Michael. Michael is the one that accepted control. He's the one that viewed the document and signed it. So that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my desktop here because I think Michael had a little bit of more slideware that he wanted to go through before we get to the questions, and remind you guys as he's doing that, please feel free to enter any of your questions into the chat. I would love to take some real live questions after we're done with the presentation here. All right, back to you, Michael.
Fantastic, Pat. I appreciate it. Every single time I get on a demo with you, I learn something new. And I'm also very happy that you did not put my real social security number in on that document because I would have some issues. But yep. Alas, before we get into the Q&A portion of this, I do have a few more slides to go through. So we'll look at those now. So Overall here, we're going to look at some more takeaways before getting into that Q&A session that I mentioned. But overall, the evolution of digital agreements, it really just shows the demand for digitally enriched agreement processes and how essential it is for businesses in our new normal, where digital now underpins all channels. Organizations who ignore consumers' digital-first preferences are going to face greater challenges trying to conduct business in an increasingly paperless world. We know that a less than optimal customer experience when completing agreements is no longer an option in a competitive market where there are multiple providers to choose from. And finally, the key takeaways here is that digital is at the center of all customer interactions. There's opportunity to leverage digital to improve engagement in all channels. Digital doesn't automatically mean easy to use, so you need to design the user experience from their point of view. And finally, blended/hybrid human digital experiences like we had just seen are a huge opportunity for any business that wants to differentiate itself from the competition. And now with that, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my presentation here, and I look forward to getting into the questions and answers.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Pat. Really appreciate your explanation of how things work. We do have some questions coming in, and I have some questions. Now, most folks already have things like Zoom, maybe Microsoft Teams. How does OneSpan sign virtual room work with those tools, or do signers need to download the virtual room and use it? Do they work together? How does that all work?
Yeah, that's a real good question. And this is Pat, I'll answer that one. Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So really the signers are free. They don't need to download anything. Once you create a transaction, they simply use the combination of email and their web browser to open up the signing ceremony. So they do not need to have a Zoom account, neither does the sender. That's all part of the OneSpan Sign service. So we can provide the technology, to share video, to share the screen sharing piece of it. So it looks like Zoom. It might act a little bit like Zoom, but yeah, it does not require any additional license outside of the OneSpan Sign, and there are absolutely no plugins or software that the signer would need to install.
So it's just a cloud-based. I click a link and I'm in.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, it's very important that the signers, once they click the link, that they don't have to have any additional friction. You don't want to go through excessive authentication. You don't want them downloading software. Otherwise, your abandonment rates are going to go, way high.
And what about security for that? So, I'm just clicking a link. I'm a customer. How do I feel secure about that?
Yeah, and again, that the key thing is you want to have authentication in place, but you also don't want to introduce too much friction because there's a fine line between the two. You want to make sure it's secure, that the right person is viewing and signing, but you also don't want to add too much friction. So you basically have your choice of going through from using the email address as authentication, which we all know is not secure. If I sent an email to Michael, if he forwarded it to somebody else or somebody had copied that email, anybody could sign the document. So we could introduce a second level, and part of that could be the high end would be the ID verification, where you're going to ask somebody, scan a picture of your driver's license or hold it in front of the camera and then put your face there. And in between there's several other options as well. A very common one is to send a text message. It's a one-time PIN at the time of signing. So as soon as Michael would have clicked the button to join the teleconference, we would generate a 5-digit PIN that's going to be sent to him via text message. He would have to enter that in before he can go into the signing ceremony. So it's a happy medium. So I would say when you're going to deploy this type of solution, look at the risk of the transaction. If you're simply doing like a non-disclosure agreement, there's no real reason to have high level of authentication. But if you're doing loan applications, it's a high risk. Or credit card applications, high risk, you want to have a high level of authentication inside of there. So they're going to be different per transaction. You don't have to always use the same. You can mix and match for different types of transactions. So different types of use cases can use different types of authentication.
Often things like a loan application require notarization. You mentioned notarization. Tell me a little bit more about how getting notarized works?
Yeah, and that's actually a really interesting topic right now, because a lot of the states in North America now are adopting remote online notary. So I think that's a reaction to of course, the pandemic is forcing people to do things in a non-face-to-face method. Right now, a lot of the states do not have all of the requirements in place, but this virtual room is going to be used to kind of expand to fulfill that need. Some of the states are saying that, of course, you have to save the recording and make that part of the audit trail. Other states are saying you don't not need to do that. So in the near future, this is going to be legal in all 50 states, at least we're thinking it is. And this virtual room is going to be used to provide that remote online notary. Today, unfortunately, a lot of states still require you to do notarization in person, but you can still do it electronically. Look at somebody's ID, and just the notary would, can apply a stamp saying that, this is my notary stamp. Basically, like when Michael signed, he can click and apply his digital notary seal. But yeah, in the near future, I would say before year end, all of these states in North America should have all of the requirements in place and allow for remote online notary.
So something to make note of what the requirements are in your particular state or the state that you are operating in at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Because even though you're based in one state, you might be doing business outside of that state. So you have to find out what the local, where you're doing business, and make sure that it's in compliant with all of those state specific rules. And in OneSpan, we will get certified as the states are coming out and solidify those requirements. So we will get our certification state by state. So once they're out there, you can take a look at our website and see, are we certified in the state of Ohio or Virginia?
I know often contracts are annotated at the time of signing. Little things in the margins become legally binding. Does the audit trail capture those annotations as well?
Well, part of the signing ceremony, we can ask for signers or for people to type into the screen. We call them data capture fields. We didn't demonstrate any of those today. So if there are annotations, are you asking specifically about the remote notaries or about the document itself?
The document itself.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So we can add comment fields, or we can identify a data capture field. So if I'm talking to a customer, I can say, well, let me type in this paragraph about your dependent. We're going to identify who the beneficiary is for your life insurance policy. And once I type that in there and I initial that, then I can go back to Michael, who is my applicant, and he can say, okay, I also need to apply my initials next to that paragraph that he just typed in. So you can annotate that, but you actually have to design that into the document. You have to have space for it inside of the document itself. We don't typically do things in the paragraph or in the margins on the left and right side, but we can do that within the body. I mean, there's nothing really stopping you. It's just, we typically like to have that designed inside of the document itself.
Where will all these records be saved?
Well, OneSpan Sign does make those available. The retention policy within an account is really up to the customer to decide. So, we can say that, it's going to be a 30-day retention policy. After that, they're purged, 45 days, 60 days, 90 days. It's really configurable for the account. But basically, we try not to be the record or the retention system. Since these documents are PDF, we highly encourage our customers to download those, to store them locally. Because we do not have the ability to do the same, we don't have the same capability as like a document management system, where you provide multiple users access to it based on their roles. We just say that whoever created the transaction can access it. But once it's downloaded into your content management system, you can make that available to other people other than the person that sent it out to be signed.
Does OneSpan offer any RON functionality currently in any state, or is it all of that to be determined?
I missed the acronym. What was it, Kevin?
It's coming from Tyler here, asking about RON function.
Oh yeah, the remote online notary. Yeah, it's right now. I do not believe it's available. We don't have it available to anybody at this point. So I think we are looking. I think in the next quarter or two to make that available to a number of states, and we're still trying to identify which ones are going to have all of their requirements solidified enough for us to focus on them. So we don't even know which ones are going to be the first one at this point.
I know we're almost out of time, but before we need to go, I do have one last question about the video playback. I understand about the audit trail and the PDF, and But the video playback is intriguing to me. How does that serve as proof of the transaction? And what would that mean, say, in a court of law?
Well, that's a really good question as well, because a lot of times people can say, I didn't understand a paragraph, which really doesn't alleviate the risk. I mean, if I didn't understand that, I should ask the question. But having a recording of that is I can go through and say, oh, I can see where the account manager made every effort to explain the entire document. That person had chances to ask questions. They seemed, it basically, it's like sitting in the same room looking over somebody's shoulder. You can, kind of look back in time and see, what was explained. Did it look like it was confusing? Because, that's actually a dispute that some customers can come back with. Is if I'm signing a loan application, I can say, you know what, that whole process was so confusing. I didn't realize I was signing a legally binding document. But when you go back and look at it and you can see what that UI looked like, you can see how it said, click here to sign. And Michael clicked that button and it applied a stamp that said it was just electronically signed by Michael. It's very, very obvious to anybody watching that video that Michael signed the document. So I guess having that video is it just allows you to go back and see what did it look like at the time. Was it simple to understand? So that can alleviate a lot of those disputes just by having that available.
Very good. Well, that is Patrick Albert, Senior Solutions Architect at OneSpan, joined by Michael McMahon, Digital Transformation Consultant at OneSpan. Mike and Pat, thank you so much for being with us on our event today. At this point, I think I'll turn it back over to Teresa to help us close out the event. Teresa, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Too many buttons I had to push there. Sorry. Thank you. I have really enjoyed watching this demonstration and learning about this opportunity. I think this is really amazing. I just want to share a couple of things that we have going on here at AIIM, and just want to mention that we have AIIM Plus. If you're looking for, if you're looking for more training, more community involvement, and just things to help you on your information management journey, just encourage you to check out aim.org/AIM-plus, and just to participate with our thriving community. And with that, we also offer our unlimited training of every program that we have that is in this portal for you to log into and have access, where all of that training is on demand for you. So go to aim.org/AIM-plus or aim.org/join. Both of those will take you there. Just encourage you to check that out. And I also wanted to mention that it's a project near and dear to my heart. AIM is working on right now our annual State of the Intelligent Information Management Industry research paper, and the survey is open right now for us to collect the responses that will become the core of our annual research, and certainly the information that we will in the statistics and the benchmarking, and your stories and the knowledge that you share in this survey. And that's something that AIM will be using throughout the coming year. And that survey is open right now. And I'm going to ask Jessica to drop the link for you to go in and take that survey. Always value your input, and certainly our State of the Industry report is just the cornerstone of what AIM produces every year. And I invite you to come in and take that. The link to take our State of the Industry survey is also available in the resources link as well. So I just wanted to mention that to you, and I would greatly appreciate if you would share your thoughts. It should take about 15 minutes to take that survey. And also, AIM 22 is coming up, and we're going to be in Denver, Colorado, and it's going to be in the last week of April. I encourage you to go to aimconference.com. Yes, we are doing this in person, and yes, we are making this as, from a health perspective, as safe and inclusive as we can. And so a lot of great presentations and a lot of commitment from speakers and presenters is already taking shape. And I encourage you to go to aimconference.com and see what all we have lined up for you. And just as we are coming to the close of our time here, I just I wanted to mention that we have been recording this webinar and it will be available. Come back and check it out again. Invite your colleagues to come and watch this. A lot of really good information that the folks at OneSpan has shared with us. And so do please check out the replay when we have that available. In the chat, in addition, we're going to put in there some repost these links again, the resources for you to share, and also the feedback survey to tell us how we did in this webinar today. And so we're going to put those links in there for you one more time, and always value your feedback. Very much want to thank our underwriter OneSpan. Without the support from our solution providers, we wouldn't be able to bring you these free educational programs. So thank you very much, OneSpan, for your support. And just as we bring our event to a close right now, I just wanted to go out to each of our presenters today for their closing thoughts or key takeaway. And let me start first with Michael McMahon, your closing thoughts today.
Of course, yes. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on this webinar. I thought it was a fantastic experience. And as always, I'm open to answer any questions. Find a way to connect with me, either LinkedIn, email, any way possible. More than happy to answer any questions that weren't asked or we did not get to, I should say. But in regards to a closing remark, I think I just want to drive home one of the last statements that I did in one of the final slides, other than my thank you, because I'm very gracious for you all to be here, is just how important the blended and kind of hybrid human digital experience is in today's nature. And we saw with the demonstration and everything, you really see how big of an opportunity it is to really expand and make sure that you're able to grow into the new normal that we're seeing with COVID today. So other than that, I just want to say thank you all once again and hope you have a happy, blessed day.
Thank you, Michael. And Pat Albert, your closing thoughts today.
Yeah, again, I just want to thank everyone, especially it was really nice to see where everybody was from. We've got one attendee all the way from Kenya, which I thought was very, very cool. But yeah, if there kind of reiterate what Michael said, if there are any follow-up questions, reach out to us, contact us. I hope you found this informative. And if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those offline, whether it's through LinkedIn or email after this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Kevin Crane, my colleague and partner in mischief as we could join all of these webinars. I know I got a whole lot out of this event today. What are your closing thoughts?
Well, Teresa, as we were talking today, it occurs to me, we talk a lot about digital transformation. Well, here we see it in front of our eyes, really. And clearly, as I said before, the business of doing business has changed. And here we see a way to really make digital transformation happen in a real way. In a real way, by what I mean by that is also getting the human part of it as well. And here we have a tool that comes down to things like a home loan or enrolling in healthcare or something really important that can give us the security that we know and count on in terms of digital transformation, e-signatures, with something that we're now so familiar with, like a web conference. So I think the tools are exciting from that point of view. You can tell that things are still unfolding in front of us, and here we are at the edge of seeing this transition happen.
I couldn't agree more. So thank you very much for your analysis of this. And thank you everyone for your time today. I'm Teresa Resick from AIIM, and we will see you with our next webinar. Have a great afternoon.
Bye, everybody.